Libertarianism. Each fall, Forbes magazine publishes a list of the 400 richest Americans. For over a decade, Microsoft's founder Bill Gates III has topped the list. Other members of the club include the owners of Walmart and the founders of Google and Amazon. Economic inequality is steeper in the United States than in other democracies. Some people think that such inequality is unjust and favor taxing the rich to help the poor. Others disagree, as well as myself. We say that there is nothing unfair about economic inequality, provided it arises without force or fraud, through the choices people make in a market economy. If justice means maximizing happiness, favor wealth redistribution. But before taxing, the utilitarian would have to ask whether doing so would lead them to work less and so earn less. Taxing the rich to help the poor is unjust because it takes money without the consent. Even for a good cause, it is coercive. It violates their liberty to do with their money whatever they please. Those who object to redistribution on these grounds are often called libertarians. Libertarians favor unfettered markets and oppose government regulation. In the name of human freedom, their central claim is that each of us has a fundamental right to liberty, the right to do whatever we want with the things we own, provided we respect other people's rights to do the same. If the libertarian theory of rights is correct, many activities of the modern state are indeed illegitimate and violations of our liberty. Only a minimal state, one that enforces contracts, protects private property from theft, and keeps the peace, is compatible with the libertarian theory of rights. Any state that does more than this is morally unjustified. The libertarian rejects three types of policies and laws that modern states commonly enact. The first is that libertarians oppose laws to protect people from harming themselves. For example, even if laws save lives and prevent devastating injuries, such laws violate the right of the individual to decide what risks to assume. As long as no third parties are harmed, the state has no right to dictate what risks they may make or take with their bodies and lives. The second is that libertarians oppose using the coercive force of law to promote notions of virtue or to express the moral convictions of the majority. I give two examples. The first is prostitution. It may be morally objectionable to many people, but that does not justify laws that prevent consenting adults from engaging in the activity. Second, majorities in some communities may disapprove of homosexuality, but that does not justify laws that deprive gay men and lesbians of the right to choose their sexual partners for themselves. And the third is the libertarian theory of rights, and that it rules out any law that requires some people to help others, including taxation for redistribution of wealth. Health or housing or education, for that matter, should be left up to the individual to undertake, not mandated by the government. The state has no more right to force affluent taxpayers to support social programs. Libertarian ideas found prominent expression in the pro-market, anti-government rhetoric as an intellectual doctrine emerging in opposition to the welfare state. Any attempt to bring about greater economic equality was bound to be coercive and destructive of a free society. For example, in the 1960s, the work Capitalism and Freedom by the American economist Milton Friedman, who was born in 1912 and died in 2006, argued that many widely accepted state activities are illegitimate, and they are infringements on individual freedom. For example, Social Security, or any mandatory government-run program. Another example is the minimum wage. Government has no right to prevent employers from paying any wage, however low, that workers are prepared to accept. The government, for example, also violates individual freedom when it makes laws against employment discrimination. My argument is if employers want to discriminate on the basis of race, religion, or any other factor, the state has no right to prevent them from doing so. Of course, that does not mean that I don't agree with it or that I don't people should do it. I have my own views. But such legislation clearly involves interference with the freedom of individuals to enter into voluntary contracts with one another. Another example is occupational licensing requirements. Also, they interfere with freedom of choice. If untrained if an untrained person wants to offer his or her less than expert services to the public, and if some customers are willing to take their chances, then the state has no business forbidding the transaction. While it is true that most people want assurance of their competence, the market can provide such information. For example, instead of relying on state licensing of people, such as doctors, people can use private rating services, such as Consumer Reports. Robert Nozick wrote a book titled Anarchy, State, and Utopia in 1974, and it offered a philosophical defense of libertarian principles and a challenge to familiar ideas of distributive justice. Individuals have rights so strong and far-reaching that they raise the question of what, if anything, the state may do. Only a minimal state limited to enforcing contracts and protecting people against violence, theft, and fraud is justified. Any more extensive state violates a person's right not to be forced to do certain things and is therefore unjustified. Simply knowing that people have billions while others are penniless does not enable one to conclude anything about the justice or injustice of the arrangement. You are entitled to what you have, and the state may not take it without your consent. Any distribution that results from a free market is therefore just. And if it can be shown that those who have landed on top are the beneficiaries of past injustices, however, such as the enslavement of African Americans or the expropriation of Native Americans, then a case can be made for remedying the injustice through taxation, reparations, etc. These measures are for redressing past wrongs, not for bringing about greater equality. Again, I must say that first liberty upsets patterns. Anyone who believes that economic inequality is unjust will have to intervene in a free market, repeatedly and continuously, to undo the effects of the choices that people make. Second, intervening in this way to support programs that help the disadvantaged not only overturns the results of voluntary transactions, but it also violates people's rights by taking their earnings. It forces them to make a charitable contribution against their will. And so the moral stakes go beyond money, however. At issue is nothing less than human freedom. Taxation of earning some labor is on par with forced labor. If the state has the right to claim some portion of my earnings, it also has the right to claim some portion of my time. Instead of taking, say, 30% of my income, it might as well just direct me to spend 30% of my time working for the state. If the state forces me to labor on its behalf, it essentially owns me as its property. So, if someone else could order me to work, that person would be my master, and I would be a slave. But if I own my labor, I must be entitled to the fruits of my labor. If someone else were entitled to my earnings, or the fruits of my labor, that person would own my labor, and would therefore own me. So in another sense, the government does not claim to own its tax-paying citizens entirely, but from the minimal taxation that it does claim to own part of us, whatever part corresponds to the portion of income we must pay to support causes beyond the minimal state. The notion of self-ownership is very appealing, especially for those who seek a strong foundation for individual rights. The idea that I belong to myself, not to the state or any political community, is one way of explaining why it is wrong to sacrifice my rights for the welfare of others. Life is not for us to take and use, however, even for a good cause. We have a right to help ourselves, and we have a right to a life that belongs to us, but we have no right to a life that does not belong to us. Again, consider the way self-ownership figures in arguments about reproductive freedom, sexual morality, and privacy. Government should not ban contraceptives or abortion, because women should be free to decide what to do with their own bodies. The law should not punish adultery, prostitution, or homosexuality, because consenting adults should be free to choose their sexual partners for themselves. I own my body, and should therefore be free to sell my body parts. And, since I own my life, I should be free to end it, if I wish, and to enlist a willing physician, or anyone else for that matter, to assist. The state has no right to prevent me from using my body or disposing of my life as I please. If I own my body, my life, and my person, then I should be free to do whatever I want with them, provided I do not harm other people. And so, with that being said, we own our bodies and lives, and we may do with them what we please.